In the early 1900s, the Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov discovered that biologically inherited behaviours could be triggered by novel stimuli. So how does this work? The eye blink reflex, for example, can be triggered by a puff of air or debris. What Pavlov discovered was that he could pair a novel object, such as this bell, with a puff of air to the eye, and eventually the bell alone would trigger the eye blink response. In horses, the flight response is an innate behaviour, so it follows that the flight response can be classically conditioned. So how does this occur? When a horse spots an unfamiliar object, such as this pig, it becomes aroused. In a free-range environment, the horse would gallop away from the frightening object. Cracking a stock whip can be pretty scary for some horses. If the stock whip is particularly aversive and elicits an emotional response, then the chemicals released by the body will actually increase the flight or the escape behaviour. This is known as sensitization, and the feared object will automatically trigger the flight response in the future. In classical conditioning, the acquisition of fears and phobias is known as a conditioned emotional response or conditioned fear response. Conversely, conditioned emotional responses can also be highly pleasant for a horse. In this example, the clicker has been associated with the pleasant feelings of eating. The take-home messages are 1. That fears and phobias result from classical conditioning processes, and 2. Our training methods can interact with the horse's temperament to make it more fearful or more calm. To recap, classical conditioning is also known as Pavlovian or respondent conditioning. In classical conditioning, there's always a two-term contingency. A stimulus triggers a biological response. Classical conditioning differs from operant conditioning in that the consequences of behaviour have no impact on the future likelihood of the biological response. Finally, classical conditioning processes are responsible for the development of fears and phobias. Piper's learnt to use the clicker. The association between the clicker and a food reward is actually classical conditioning.